Thanks for starting your week with us. Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Lee Ji-yoon in Seoul. Let's see what we have lined up for you this morning. Plans to inject nearly $20 billion into the country's economy. We take a closer look at the country's stimulus package and extra budget to revitalize the sagging Korean economy. Smaller companies step up efforts to win over the hearts of Korea's younger job seekers as they face a shortage in manpower. These stories and more coming right up. A resounding no to new bailout funding is what Greeks voted for as they hit the polls on Sunday, pushing the country and Europe as a whole into uncharted waters. Celebrations broke out late into the night as virtually every voting district rejected more austerity, a decision that Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras called brave and a mandate for an alternative solution to a policy of austerity. The Greek economy had contracted by 25% over the past 5 years. An EU summit is set to be held on Tuesday to discuss the results. While direct impact on the Korean economy is expected to be minimal, uncertainties in the European market remains a cause for concern. Two Korean companies have topped the ratings list for next-generation batteries, known as energy storage systems, considered one of the potential growth engines for the country. Global market researcher Navigant Research said Korea's largest chemical company, LG Chem, topped the list with a score of 84, with energy solutions provider Samsung SDI following at 83.5. The evaluation is based on factors such as production strategy, system integration, marketing, and price competitiveness. The impact of the MERS outbreak is feared to reverberate into the third quarter, further dimming prospects for Korean companies. According to sources in the financial investment industry, including data provider WiseFN, the projected third quarter earnings of 117 listed companies with forecasts from at least 3 securities firms was $25.8 billion, down 6.3% from the end of May. The leisure and travel industries are set to shrink by 12.4% in the third quarter, while health-related companies are poised to gain 5.4%. Korea's youth unemployment rate for the first 5 months of this year hovered above 10%. However, small and mid-sized firms are still finding it hard to recruit new hires despite such high youth unemployment rate, with some saying the problem lies in the perception that younger people have toward smaller firms. So, some companies have decided to take matters into their own hands. Our Lee Ju-young has the story.
Minjin is a small firm that manufactures cosmetic containers, but it says it's been getting more difficult to hire new employees.
Most of our applicants were reluctant to join, even saying they don't want to because we're not in Seoul.
The situation is not so much different at SH Tech, a company manufacturing auto parts. It says it's hard to run the company with just 88 employees, but it's even harder to find new hires, in spite of the country's youth unemployment rate, which hit double digits earlier this year.
Many university students think small and mid-sized firms have very poor working conditions and have no presence.
It's this perception that makes fresh graduates reluctant to apply to these smaller firms, even though some companies reach millions of dollars in annual revenue. That's why the Convergence Federation of Small and Medium Businesses decided to extend help by hosting a company tour for applicants in order to paint a more positive image of these businesses.
We'll try to get all 31 participants hired and guarantee 100% employment for future participants.
Applicants say the experience has given them a fresh perspective.
I really like being able to get a look at things firsthand instead of just looking at the website at home.
As figures show, the majority of Korea's small and mid-sized enterprises face a severe shortage in manpower, more efforts are being made to offer solutions for both companies and young job seekers. Lee Ju-young, Business Daily.
The buzzword in Korean TV these days has been cooking shows. It involves an unlikely character in the kitchen, at least here in Korea, fathers and generally men. And this trend is giving way to what's called recipe marketing. And our Eunice Kim explains what this is all about.
With his good-humored approach and easy-to-follow cooking know-how, restaurant entrepreneur Baek Jong-won is leading Korea's current food show craze on the small screen. If he had been better known as actress So Yoo-jin's husband before, he's now become a modern-day Julia Child to his viewers, who emulate his recipes that feature ubiquitous ingredients measured by paper cups. In fact, he's become such a fixture since his show's launch in May that when his so-called all-purpose soy sauce recipe rode airwaves, its ingredients, minced pork and mild guari peppers, sold at much higher levels than they had in the same period last year.
Being a newlywed, I'm still green in the kitchen, but the all-purpose soy sauce seemed like a good idea to jazz up my cooking.
The popularity of such approachable cooking shows has also given way to what's called recipe marketing. For cable channel TVN's sister company, CJ Jeiljedang, it already enjoyed a 15% sales boost last year, thanks to a popular one-of-a-kind samjang recipe. And this year, it's rolling out cooking classes and cooking competitions utilizing its products.
Customers tend to use seasonings and sauces in limited ways. With these recipes, we hope they can use more of our products.
It's proving to be a win-win for food companies and their customers, who are increasingly seeking easy and tasty ways to fill their bellies at home. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
A multi-billion-dollar supplementary budget will be submitted to the National Assembly today, which the government hopes to win approval for by July 20th. It comes as part of a much larger stimulus package to give the economy a lift. And for more on the details of the finalized budget plan, our Shin Se-min joins us in the studio. Welcome, Se-min.
Morning to you.
All right, so the government said it would spend a total of 22 trillion won, which is about $19.6 billion to prop up the suffering economy. But I believe that this extra budget was decided on relatively quickly compared to other previous cases.
Yes, as you said, the government said it would spend a large chunk of stimulus funds into the economy to prop up and to support the country's economic growth. And now this is the second, well, it's not the second, but it's 2 years after its previous when the government spent $15.4 billion to support the ailing economy then. But this year's is larger in scale and it's different compared to previous plans.
A total of $19.6 billion worth of stimulus funds into the flagging economy. It's an effort made to hold the country's economic growth rate in the 3% range. Of that sum, a $10.5 billion supplementary budget has been set aside to deal with Korea's most pressing issues.
The extra budget should breathe fresh life into the economy and stabilize the livelihoods of ordinary people affected the most by the MERS outbreak. It should also prevent a sharp drop in consumer spending.
From the total extra budget, $5.5 billion will be spent on countering losses from the MERS outbreak and the ongoing drought. The remaining $5 billion will cover tax revenue shortfalls caused by the slowing economy. Over $2 billion will go to those affected by the MERS outbreak by supporting patients with medical expenses, hospitals and clinics, along with the hardest-hit service sectors. $700 million will go to securing water supply for farming. The rest to the public welfare, including more jobs for the unemployed and supporting regional economies by spurring investment. But opinions are divided on whether the amount proposed and the timing is right, as the effects of the MERS outbreak and the drought have yet to wane.
It may or may not be enough depending on how you look at it. If supporting the economy is the goal, then it's far from being enough. But the extra budget aims to deal with the most pressing matters, like MERS, so I believe it will be enough.
The extra spending plan as a whole is estimated to boost economic growth by 0.3 percentage points this year and 0.4 percentage points in 2016. But concerns over the country's fiscal soundness linger, as the Finance Ministry plans to sell $8.5 billion worth of new Treasury bonds to fund the extra budget, an added 10% from previously planned sales.
By issuing new Treasury bonds, the country's fiscal soundness may be challenged, and it could potentially drag down the economy, as it will have to be made up 4 years later.
The extra budget will raise the national debt to GDP ratio to 37.5% this year, up nearly 2 percentage points from last year.
All right, so the stimulus package is to keep the economic growth range in the 3% range. But then what significance does this figure 3% range really hold?
It's not necessarily about the figure per se. Rather, analysts say it's more about a psychological factor. You see, if the first digit of the country's growth target drops, it gives the public an idea that the economy is doing really bad. Plus, it also looks bad for the sitting finance minister who vowed to revitalize the economy, introducing Trenomics upon his appointment last year.
All right. And also, public sentiment is important when it comes to consumer spending, and Korea's consumer spending is already slow. And considering all this, what do analysts think about the growth, the possibility of keeping this growth rate in 3% range? Will these funds be enough to do that?
Well, it varies. Some say it is, while others are very pessimistic. Already, a number of local financial institutions, along with international investment banks, have lowered the country's economic growth outlook for this year to 2% range. And also, there's a growing concern that even the central bank would lower its outlook, which that's currently sets at 3.1 to 2% range, maybe in this Thursday.
Okay, so the stimulus package may not be enough for the economy. And you also briefly touched upon some of the concerns, which includes the idea of funding this through government bonds and state bonds.
That's right. Issuing more Treasury bonds will decrease the value of the government bond, thereby increasing the possibility of a benchmark rate increase. It's not a problem now, considering that the country's benchmark rate sits at lowest recorded at 1.5%. But if you have to also consider the U.S. Federal Reserve, because they haven't touched upon their interest rate yet, so a rate hike could give Korea a lesser room down the line.
So the concern could be the increasing interest rate in a short period of time, and also more Koreans probably borrow because of these cheap interest rates.
That's right.
All right, I guess we'll have to keep an eye on what happens from here on out. Thank you so much for your insights, Haemin.
My pleasure.
And that wraps it up for today's edition of Business Daily. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back tomorrow with more, so don't forget to tune in then. Thanks for watching, and goodbye for now.